in the country. The Senator for Homa Bay County, Senator Moses Kajwang, has a motion on integrating climate change into national education curriculum, that aware that climate change is complex, it matters social and scientific issue, which is characterized by uncertain and context-specific knowledge, demanding that educators engage in inquiry and co-learning with students, and while noting that the lack of time and curriculum opportunities to address climate change in classrooms, and cognizant of this particular fact, further noting that climate change education explores mitigation and matters adaptation at both local and global level, the Senate now therefore calls upon the Ministry of Education, in liaison with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, to mainstream climate change education throughout formal education systems through integrating climate education in school curriculum to creatively prepare children and young people for a rapidly changing and certain, risky, and possibly dangerous future, and train as well as equip teachers and school administrators with the necessary information and skills to teach climate education in schools. Another motion given priority in the order paper this afternoon is a motion by Senator Veronica Ndwati on the plight of Kenyans, domestic workers working in the Middle East. The Senate will equally consider a motion by Senator James Lomenen on the drought hunger mitigation in Turkana County. Under the provisions and order of business at the Senate, a message will also be conveyed by the Speaker, and this particular message is from Nyandarua County Assembly on the construction of Ithire Aberdare Forest, Kahuroko Ndunyu Njeru Market, Ndunyu Njeru Road construction with the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, the Kenya National Highways Authority, and the Kenya Forest Service, as well as the Kenya Wildlife Service. The Senate will also have reports tabled this afternoon under the papers category for consideration before the floor of the House. And we have the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason King, in the chamber this afternoon. Let's now hear what is commencing in the chamber.
As your servants, whom you've been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic, we seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Clerk, do you have quorum? Kindly ring the quorum bell. 5 minutes.
The Speaker of the Senate has been advised on matters quorum and ordered for the quorum bell to be rung for a couple of minutes. And this is to allow for members of the Senate to make their way into the chamber. And if you're just watching or joining us, the whip, that is Senator Bonnie Halowale, has just stepped out of the chamber to rally members of the Senate to make their way into the chamber to allow the House commence business this afternoon. They keep streaming as we're speaking, and just look at the order paper this afternoon is that pursuant to Standing Orders number 52 subsection 1, the Senator for West Pokot County, Senator Julius Murgol, will be making a statement on the importance of establishing women's self-help groups, especially in conflict-prone areas. In regards to Standing Orders 53 subsection 1, 4 senators will be seeking statements. And the first senator is the Senator for Taita Taveta County, Senator Jones Maruma, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. And his statement is in regards to the county boundary cut line between Taita Taveta County and the neighboring counties. The Senator for Taita Taveta County will equally be making a statement or seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Lands, Environment and Natural Resources concerning the acquisition of land belonging to residents of Ikanga area in Bolombolo Ward of Voi Sub-County in Taita Taveta County by the Kenya Airports Authority. The Senator for Meru County, Senator Kathuri Murungi, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Labor and Social Welfare regarding the establishment and management of sports training academies in the country. And lastly, the nominated Senator Chrysol Sige will also be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Health concerning the Ministry of Health Strategic Plan 2018 to 2023, specifically to persons with matters disability. Those are just but some of the highlights in the order of business of the Senate this afternoon, with a lot for consideration. The drought and hunger mitigation in Turkana County, a motion by Senator James Lomenen, is a motion for consideration this afternoon. That's aware that Turkana County continues to experience extremely dry weather conditions, while the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reporting that the aggregate rainfall for the 6-month period ending September 2022 represented only 21% of the normal rainfall, and further aware that the prevailing weather conditions have resulted in the drying up of wells, boreholes, loss of pasture, crops, and therefore rendering any form of farming impracticable. And further noting that residents have been forced into migration with their livestock in search of pasture and water, which has exposed them to the raids by bandits and resulting in children dropping out of schools. The senator is concerned that droughts have been recorded in the county since in the 1960s, and the frequency of their occurrences has progressively increased, with drought in the county becoming a yearly phenomenon. And now, therefore, the Senate urges the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, Water and Matters Sanitation and Irrigation, Education, as well as Minister of East Africa Community and the ASALs and Regional Development through the National Drought Management Authority to come up with a policy framework to address the perennial drought in the county, and as well as come up with policy programs addressing the current needs of the county. The House is yet to attain the requisite quorum to allow senators commence business this afternoon, and the quorum bell is on as we speak. And a further look at the motion by James Lomenen on matters drought in Turkana County the Senate, or the Senator is proposing that the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of East African Community, and the National Drought Management Authority comes up with a policy framework to address perennial drought in the country, and as well as in the county. And these particular measures include, among others, roll out a rapid response initiative program of providing foodstuffs to the affected residents of the county to address critical needs.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge in the Speaker's Gallery the presence of Mr. Vincent Kipiator, Principal Security Officer from the County Assembly of Nairobi, who is at the Senate for an attachment. You may stand to be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. There he is. Honorable Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I welcome you to the Senate and wish you well for the remainder of your visit. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 48.3 and 4, I have received a message from the Speaker of the Nyandarua County Assembly regarding a resolution by the County Assembly to petition the Senate to consult with and initiate approval of the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, the Kenya National Highways Authority, KENHA, the Kenya Forest Service, KFS, and the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS, on the Ihithe Aberdare Forest Kahuruko Ndunyu Njeru Road construction and tarmacking project. The message was received in the Senate by way of a letter communicating a resolution passed by the County Assembly on the 2nd November 2022 as follows. That aware that paragraph 5 of part 2 to the 4th schedule to the Constitution of Kenya assigns the county government's functions and powers pertaining to the county transport, including county roads, county planning and development, stormwater management and development, regulation of markets. Further aware that paragraph 8 of part 1 of the 4th schedule to the Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides that national government has the duty to construct and maintain national trunk roads and standardize construction and maintenance of roads by counties with the overall aim of providing an efficient road network in Kenya aimed at improving the lives of the citizens and improve service delivery. Noting, Honorable Senators, kindly come in. Noting that Kenya National Highways Authority Kenya is a state corporation established under the Kenya Roads Act 2007, does on behalf of the national government deal with management, development, rehabilitation and maintenance of national trunk roads comprising classes S, A and B roads. Further, noting that Kenya is the custodian of the national road network, plays a critical role in providing quality national road network for sustainable social and economic development, and has a responsibility to manage, and leverage our resources in a way that promotes a healthy and sustainable environment, appreciating that the proposed Ihithe Aberdare Forest Kahuruko Ndunyu Njeru Road, which was to traverse 25 kilometers of Aberdare National Park and forest, with the alternative being Nyahururu Nyeri Road, which is approximately 180 kilometers, was aimed at reducing travel time and potentially lower costs of farm produce and improve tourism in the region amongst the counties of Nyandarua, Nyeri, Nakuru, and Murang'a, among others. Concerned that the cancellation of the tender of this road has dampened the hopes of traders in Kiambu, Murang'a, and Nyeri counties who are eyeing to establish links with farmers in Nyandarua, while noting that for many years, Nyandarua County has been known as Kenya's food basket. Further, concerned that due to poor infrastructure, farmers cannot adequately take their products to better markets, leading to perpetuated suffering of the residents of these counties, recognizing that the reason given for the cancellation of the tender on the construction of the road is that it will interfere with the Aberdare forest ecosystem, is not good enough, since human beings have always interacted with wildlife and forestry, with the following being some of the projects cutting through forests and national reserves. 1. Thika Flyover, Magumu Road. Naivasha Njabini Gatura Road, under construction. Nairobi Mombasa Road, cutting through Tsavo National Parks. Now, therefore, this House does resolve to petition the Senate to 1. Consult with the National Environmental Management Authority, Kenya National Highways Authority, Kenya Forest Service, and the Kenya Wildlife Service with an aim of considering the retendering and construction of the tarmacking of Ihithe Aberdare Forest, Kahuruko Ndunyu Njeru Road, and initiate approvals from the Kenya Forest Service, National Environmental Management Authority, and the Kenya Wildlife Service for the benefit of the people of the region. 2. Request the Governor, His Excellency Dr. Moses Kiere Badilisha, to establish a committee represented by the Nyandarua leadership to spearhead multilateral negotiations amongst Nyeri County Government, the National Treasury, and the Ministry of Transport and Energy, Kenya Forest Service, Kenya Wild Service, National Environmental Management Authority, and the Kenya National Highways Authority. Honorable Senators, I direct, pursuant to Standing Order 48-7C, that the matter be considered jointly by the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing, and the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. I thank you. Yes, Senator Chiranke.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I want to thank Nyandarua County Assembly and the county government for this petition. Mr. Speaker, it's ironical that National Environment and Management Authority and are using reason that environmental impact assessment cannot allow the road to pass. Mr. Speaker, you and me are aware that in this city, Mr. Speaker, even houses are built on the river riparian areas, Mr. Speaker. And in many countries, if that road would have been allowed to pass, it will not in any way undermine the wildlife ecosystem, Mr. Speaker. This is just unfortunate because the people of Nyandarua cannot continue to suffer. Mr. Speaker, Nyandarua County is very strategic. There are so many farmers who would want to access the market of Nairobi City County and even Nakuru and other parts of the country, Mr. Speaker. If we want to create easy access to markets, we must allow infrastructure, but to coexist with the wildlife, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, and the Environmental Impact Assessment, Mr. Speaker, should stop this activism at the expense of the livelihoods of the people of Nyandarua and the economy of that area, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the most suffering individual at the moment in this country, Mr. Speaker, is a farmer. Be it a farmer of potatoes, a farmer of maize, a farmer of cashew nuts, a farmer of sugarcane, a farmer of coffee, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, you are continuing to frustrate, Mr. Speaker, by not even allowing them to have an access to be able to sell their produce to good markets like Nairobi City County, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think this is the high time that we must put in place protection mechanisms, Mr. Speaker. It is a disdaining attitude, Mr. Speaker, towards a farmer. Remember, Mr. Speaker, despite the high cost of inputs, farmers in Nyandarua and in Nandi and most of did buy a fertilizer 7,000 shillings per bag, Mr. Speaker. But because of the patriotism, they have gone to the farm, Mr. Speaker, despite the high cost of input, Mr. Speaker. It is very unfortunate that NEMA, which prides itself in compliance, can lie to the country that environment impact assessment does not allow us to pass. We know even in coast, Mr. Speaker, there are roads passed through the national park. There are many roads, Mr. Speaker. What we should be pushing is a peaceful coexistence between the wildlife and the people. And in any case, this is the road that passes through, Mr. Speaker. And would allow even access for tourism to thrive within that area, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for the wisdom. And please, I want to beg all of us, even as a Senate, as a Parliament, we must put in place protection mechanisms to protect the farmer. We cannot, anywhere, Mr. Speaker, if you travel outside this country, you cannot even carry one seedling. You will be arrested and prosecuted. Why? Because they are protecting the interests of their farmers. If we protect the farmer, Mr. Speaker, this nation, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, is an agro-economy nation. Almost 90%, Mr. Speaker, depend on agriculture. Even from where Senator Katuri Murungi comes from. If you touch Mira, he will remove that cap, Mr. Speaker, in protest. I can tell you for free, anywhere, even if you touch bananas from Nyamira, my brother Senator Okongo Mugeni, Senior Counsel, Mr. Speaker, there will be a protest, even cashew nuts, Mr. Speaker, from coast. So it is a high time, Mr. Speaker, that we must put in place the necessary policies and mechanisms to protect our farmers, Mr. Speaker, and I support fully. I know our brother Senator Medu will be, I think you have even directed, and is the chair of one of the committees, will provide the necessary inside information, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that road is constructed. Let the people of Nyandarua access markets, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't complain in the high cost of food. Now we are saying there is high cost of food, yet we can't allow farmers to access, Mr. Speaker, the market of Nairobi City County, where our brother Senator Sifuna has always insisted that there is a hunger, Mr. Speaker, within some specific areas, especially slums. We should allow access to this market, Mr. Speaker, so that food can become affordable. I thank you for the opportunity.
Matthew.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First and foremost, I really want to laud the County Assembly of Nyandarua for the resolution that they made. I have kept myself abreast with the happenings on the tendering and the now cancellation of the tender for the Ndonyonjero Ihide Road. And really for those who may not understand how and why that road is so important to the people of Nyandarua and the people of Nyeri, is that as it is now, for a person who is in a constituency, say like Kinangop, they will have to do 72 kilometers to Olkalau, another 36 kilometers to Nyahururu, another 96 kilometers to Nyeri, another 24 kilometers to Ihide. And the road, as it was designed, from Ndonyonjero to Ihide, it will cut all that distance of about 200 kilometers to just 36 kilometers. Mr. Speaker, even as my committee and that of Senator Karongo, the Committee on Transport, looks at the resolution, we would never want to belabor on the importance of market to the farmers of Nyandarua. Nyandarua is generally a horticultural county, very, very productive in production of, we are number one in production of maize. We are in production of potatoes, sorry. We are number two in production of milk. We are number one in production of cowpeas. We are number one in production of French beans. We are number one in production of carrots. we are number 1 in production of cabbages. And Mr. Speaker, despite the county being very, very productive, our problem has always been market. Mr. Speaker, it is a very sad state of affairs that cabbages at some point are being sold at 5 shillings. Milk at some point, we feed it to the dogs, and a dog sees you with a jerrycan, it's running away. And when we get an opportunity to have market for our produce to the counties of Murang'a and Nyeri, through shortening distance and through making a market accessible to the people of Nyandarua, we were very hopeful that the road would be done. And I would want to say, because it has happened many other places, as they have ably prosecuted in the message that you've read, the SGR is going through the Nairobi National Park. We have Savo. We have many other places that we have flyovers. If it requires that we coexist with the elephants, because the NEMA placed the elephants as priority number 1 on the animals that whose original way of life we are affecting. If it occurs that we do a flyover so that we are able to coexist with the elephants, that would be so important, so that we do not disrupt the pattern of living of the animals, and they also coexist with us, so that we are able to get the road. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to the support of my colleagues. The people of Nyandarua really require that road. And as the senator who spoke before me just said, the people of Nairobi, you really depend on the people of Nyandarua for the for the produce that we produce. You are our number 1, number 1 in terms of market, number 1 in terms of customers. So when we are having such problems, you should be the first that will be coming to our support. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of this Senate today, the 23rd of November, 2022. Being, Mr. Speaker, 1, report of the Auditor General on the special audit report on the public participation in the county budget making process for financial year 2021-22. 2, Mr. Speaker, report of the East African Legislative Assembly Committee on Accounts on the audited East African Community financial statements for the financial year ended 30th June 2020. 3, Mr. Speaker, report of the East African Legislative Assembly Committee on Legals, Rules and Privileges on the assessment of the status of ratifications and implementation of the East African Community Protocols and the East African Community laws by the partner states. 4, Mr. Speaker, a report of the East African Community Legislative Assembly Committee on general purpose of the oversight activity to assess the progress made by the Inter-University Council of East Africa in the harmonization of education systems in East Africa, Mr. Speaker. 5, report of the East African Legislative Assembly Committee on Regional Affairs and Conflict Resolutions on assessing the measures instituted by the partner states for the safety and security of movement of the people, their goods on Lake Victoria and on Lake Tanganyika, Mr. Speaker. 6, the East African Community Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 3 of 2022. 7, the East African Community Surveillance, Compliance and Enforcement Commission Bill for 2022. And finally, Mr. Speaker, but not least, the resolution of the East African Legislative Assembly to support the ongoing East African Crude Oil Pipeline Project, EACPO. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Honorable Senator Maith?
Mr. Speaker, it is really not a point of order per se, but I would really want to get your guidance because every time Senator Cheriot keeps reminding us that we are young and we are learning. I've been patient and learning, but I think at this point I would really want your guidance. I've read that I think the second or third schedule of the Constitution of Kenya on the symbols of national unity, and also I have looked at all public and government buildings. We have to have the portrait of the president because the presidency is a sign of or a symbol of national unity, and to some extent to show that he's the man who is in charge. I have been at the entrance of the National Assembly. I've seen the portraits of the speakers who've been serving, and that one of the most recent speaker is just next to the door. I have been looking at our entrance here. I've been looking at your portrait, unless I have a problem with my sight. I have not been seeing your portrait, so I am wondering whether somebody thinks that you're not in charge or there's a problem. If there's a problem in procurement, I have a very good person who can do that kind of portrait so that we can advance the bottom up. There's a very good person who can do it on behalf of the Senate, and I can even be able to deliver it in not more than 24 hours if I'm given that particular. And because we have commissioners who are here, that is something that can be done even now. Even the vice chair of the commission is here. That is something you can ask me to do it, Mr. Speaker. But I have noted with concern that it is not there. And this is, I think, you are that month in office. And I was your agent in the elections. So if anybody plays with your election, I feel very bad. That is why I wanted your guidance. Thank you.
Honorable Maithu, I've been really struggling to understand your point of order. I think that is the point of concern, and the concerned parties have taken note. Next order. Chair. Honorable Senators, as you have observed, the Senate Majority Leader has laid on the table of the Senate the report of the Auditor General on the Citizens' Accountability Audit on Public Participation in the County Budget Making Process for financial year 2021-2022. Article 201A of the Constitution requires openness, accountability, and public participation in financial management. Article 196(1)(b) requires the County Assembly to facilitate public participation and involvement in the legislative and other business of the County Assembly and its committees. Further, Section 125(2) of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 requires the County Executive Committee member for finance in each county to ensure citizens' participation in the planning and budgeting processes. Citizens' accountability audit is a proactive approach in auditing where citizens play a key role in public resources management. Citizens' participation in Kenya's governance process is integral in all public decision-making processes. Citizens' participation in the budget process is anchored in Article 1 of the Constitution, which vests all sovereign power to... Honorable Joyce, you're out of order. Yes, take your seat. Even if the chair gets you standing, you should take the next available space. It could be a bench, it could be the floor, you need to be seated. So citizen participation in the budget process is anchored in Article 1 of the Constitution, which vests all sovereign power to the people of Kenya and to be exercised only in accordance with the Constitution. Such power may be exercised either directly or indirectly through their democratically elected representatives. Citizens' accountability audit on the county budget making process assess the level of compliance with the relevant legal requirements and determine the effectiveness of the public participation in promoting good governance. It is against this backdrop that the Office of the Auditor General undertook a citizens' accountability audit on public participation on county budget making process across 18 counties, namely Nairobi City, Kiambu, Kisii, Homa Bay, Kisumu, Kakamega, Narok, Bungoma, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, Isiolo, Meru, Kirinyaga, Nakuru, Garissa, Kilifi, Mombasa, and Makueni, and has submitted a report to the Senate highlighting experiences from the county governments and making recommendations on the same. Honorable Senators, in my considered opinion, this report is not an ordinary report on financial statements and operations of county governments. And in this respect, I therefore refer the report to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget, working together with the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights to scrutinize its contents and make observations and recommendations thereon by way of a report submitted to the Senate for consideration and adoption. The committees are required to identify gaps in the public participation processes highlighted by the Auditor General and to come up with legislative interventions that will standardize procedures across the 47 county governments. Appreciating that the budget cycle for the next financial year is already ongoing, I urge the standing committees to expeditiously consider the report and to submit their recommendation within the next 60 days for consideration by the Senate. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
The Senator for West Pokot. Okay. The Honorable Senator for West Pokot, Senator Julius Murgo. Senator Johannes Moruma. Senator Kathuri Murungi.
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare on the establishment and management of sports training academies in counties. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, provide a detailed status report on the measures the Kenya Academy of Sports has taken to establish and maintain sports training academies in counties, following its establishment via Section 33 of the Sports Act, and to comply with Article 6.3 of the Constitution that requires a national stage organ to ensure reasonable access to its services in all parts of the country. And number 2, outline the structures that the Kenya Academy of Sports has established to aid in scouting, development, and promotion of talent in sports in counties. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether I can make a 1-point comment, 2 minutes or 1 minute, sir.
Honorable Senator, you know very well that you cannot explain your statement, neither can you debate your statement. You read it as you submitted and approved by the Speaker. Thank you, Senator. Edwin Sifuna, what say you?
Just given your direction, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I should proceed. I wanted to add one word on this.
That you can do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am very happy that this particular statement is being sought. Mr. Speaker, I am personally very passionate about sports and sporting facilities, especially here in the city where we have a lot of talents. So I'll be looking forward to this statement, Mr. Speaker. It continues to break my heart, Mr. Speaker, that we do not take sports seriously. We have even an ongoing problem, and this is an issue I've spoken to on this floor, that there is absolutely no support for the national teams, Mr. Speaker. Just this morning, I was being informed that the rugby national team, the women rugby team, the Lionesses, are supposed to be going for the Dubai Sevens, Mr. Speaker. They are unable to even afford tickets. There is absolutely no support from government. There is no word from the CS for sports, and yet we had this sports fund here that was supposed to be able to sort out some of these things, Mr. Speaker. So I would encourage the Committee on Labour to give this particular matter the seriousness it deserves. Once we know the status of all this, the sports fund and the facilities in the counties and especially in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, we can then take it up from there. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chiranke.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. One quick comment is I want to thank Senator Katuri Murungi for this statement. Mr. Speaker, where I come from, 99% in Nandi County, we are called the source of champions, depend on sports. Mr. Speaker, if you kill sports, you kill our youth in my county. We had what we call sports fund. At some point, it was diverted during the last regime to fund. Then we were being told to fund Petroleum Development Levy Fund as a subsidy, Mr. Speaker. I think it is the right time. I saw the CS Ababu Namwamba meeting with various federations. Mr. Speaker, the problem is with federations. Federations must do elections, Mr. Speaker. There are federations that have taken 10 years to do elections. And therefore, it means there is nothing innovative that they are bringing on the table, Mr. Speaker. Even, Mr. Speaker, as the World Cup is ongoing in Qatar, we are just remaining as spectators, Mr. Speaker, because the problem starts with management and governance of sports in this country, Mr. Speaker. And from the look of things, if we don't work hard, the only time that the Kenyan football will appear in an international stage might be when during the second coming of Jesus Christ, Mr. Speaker. So we must agree, Mr. Speaker, that if we have to get a better future, we must invest in talent, innovation, in investment, in protection, Mr. Speaker. The second point, Mr. Speaker, you saw 2 weeks ago, and I brought a statement where the issue of doping, especially in both athletics and other sectors, Mr. Speaker. This is one of the soft underbelly that will kill the careers of most of the youthful people in as much as talent is concerned, Mr. Speaker. The anti-doping agency released 22 names. They are saying they are going to release more 26 names. These are young people who are barely 21, 22 years. Their lives are now in jeopardy because allegedly they have been caught with the abuse of drugs, Mr. Speaker, by the ADAC. Mr. Speaker, I'm requesting the following, even as you add on the development of talent. One, that let us not only ban the athletes or the sportsmen and women, let us also go for the coaches, the trainers, the training camp. Mr. Speaker, this is the country where somebody, a tourist, using a tourism visa, lands at JKIA, goes to somewhere in Kaptagat or Nandi Hills, and starts training athletes using tourism visa. And we find it okay in this country, Mr. Speaker. Yet there is immigration department. Mr. Speaker, I think we must stop this. Like here in Nairobi City County, just like any other counties, there is so much talent. It is for us to identify, work towards it. We have a law that, and Mr. Speaker, Kenyans should know that we have a fund called Sports Fund. And the President has promised that that fund will be ring-fenced. Let that fund be used to identify. And if we can use that sports fund to identify the talent, I can assure you, in the next, Mr. Speaker, because I saw jokingly, in the next 2026 World Cup, where it will be held in Mombasa and Machakos, Kenya might likely feature in the World Cup that is on camp, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I'll be happy to join my brother, Senator Katuri Murungi, on this matter together with Senator Sifuna and other colleagues to try and ensure, Mr. Speaker, that the sports works for us. We depend entirely on it. The economy, Mr. Speaker, in Eldoret City County, the economy in Kapsabet town, Mr. Speaker, is, Mr. Speaker, even in Iten, is sustained by the money that comes from sports. If we protect sports, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you the entire of North Rift, including my county, will continue to prosper if we can invest so much in sports, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks and comments, Mr. Speaker, I hope the Committee on Sports, Welfare will handle this matter with the agency it deserves. Let us give opportunity to our young people to thrive. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Crystal Lesige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to also add to this statement. I also just wanted to add that sports should be seen from the lens of persons with disabilities as well. I wish to inform the House and Kenyans that are listening that people with disabilities are very talented in many ways, including sports. And right now, the Sports Fund isn't really supporting persons with disabilities in different fields and disciplines in the sporting world in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, currently, on the 3rd of December, there is the Kenya Sports Federation of the Visually Impaired that are having trials in preparation for next year's games in Birmingham, which, of course, as you will know, is the prerequisite for the Paris Olympics and Paralympics in 2024. And right now, they don't have any funding at all, zero. We are, I'll say, because I'm in that same association, we are funding amongst ourselves, getting no help from government at all. And we're the people that are going to hopefully go to these world stages and represent Kenya as a whole. Mr. Speaker, sports isn't just for the non-disabled, it's also for people with disabilities to showcase their talent, but also as an escape, Mr. Speaker. I personally am a swimmer. From Mombasa County, I used to swim when I was in high school when I still had my vision, and I continue swimming because when I swim, Mr. Speaker, I forget that I'm blind. In the water, when I am just myself and no noise, no obstacles in my way, when I swim, I feel absolutely free. And that is the same sentiment that many people with disabilities go through. It's a way for us to express ourselves and to escape the barriers that we have to face in the built environment. And so I wish that everyone that's listening to this statement specifically to consider sports for the disabled as well. I thank you.
Senator Ekomwa James Lomenem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to support the statement by the Deputy Speaker. Mine, Mr. Speaker, is just to inform the committee which is concerned in sports that in the county that I come from, there are people with very excellent talents called warriors, and we have made them to go to the church and reform themselves from killing people, raiding livestock, and killing women in the highway. So instead of running fast with the cattle and the camels, we have decided to urge the government, especially the Minister of Sports, these people to be included in athletics. They will be very fast, running with 100 meters. And we will have gold, many golds in this nation, instead of them running with livestock. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, moreover, it is also a concern that most of these people are marginalized. They do not even know what is happening in the nation. They don't know whether sport is there. They don't know where people provide the athletics, sports. They're only busy in adding. It is higher time for this House, Mr. Speaker, to educate, to take time in this participation to educate these people with what are the right things to do in a day. Because, like now the county of Turkana, for example, they can scheme, they can plan for sports annually, quarterly, so that we encourage these people to come and participate in sport, in athletics. I'm very sure, Mr. Speaker, we will have wonderful people and we will reduce the issue of killings and rapings in highway. Mr. Speaker, I urge and I request the department of the Committee of Sports to consider the reformed warriors and be part of the people who are supposed to assist this nation in athletics. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, I can also inform Senator Cherengei. There are people for Turkana County youth who are very good at athletics, but their names have been changed from Turkana names to Nandi. There is the one called Erupe. Instead of being called Erupe, they call Chariot. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, how do you indulge for such issues? It is not a point of order, but it is a point of information to know that these talents that we are tapping, we must have specific talents in a specific area. Yes, so that we don't commit a fallacy of generalization. Anybody who knows running in Kenya are being said that they come from Nandi, they come from Elgeyo. No, not everybody who knows running comes from Elgeyo. They should also come from Garissa, Nyandarua. So, Mr. Speaker, that is a point of information.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of sports, just to echo what the Senator from Nairobi said, is something which is a major industry, an industry that offers very high-paying jobs all over the world. I request the committee to take a holistic approach to this problem. For example, you need to speak to the Ministry of Education and see how the education system is going to be tweaked so that children have time for sports. At the moment, children have only time for studying and preparing for exams. Mr. Speaker, if this is addressed, then the centers that were serving as football academies in this country will be revived. Musingu High School of the Scorpions, Kakamega High School of the Green Commandos, Iterio Boys in Kisii, Mr. Speaker, Kisumu High School, and Mombasa High School, and finally Upper Hill High School. We need to address this. We are missing out in the process of wanting to train for the usual professionals. We are losing out on professionals in sports, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we alert Senator Cherengei that human trafficking is punishable under our penal code. So if it is true that we have trafficked young people from Turkana to Nandi, and you're calling them
Senator,
Nandis. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sorry to address him. I started feeling that I was addressing a criminal. He's not a criminal, and he could easily hit me from the back. That's why I was looking at him. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it's important that we free our children. Talent is gotten from the youth. Talent is gotten from the youth. We constructed a makeshift stadium in Marinya, and thanks to that stadium, children are emerging from that little stadium to join football clubs here in Nairobi. It shows what can happen if we put facilities in our regions so that our children can get access to these high-paying jobs, Mr. Speaker.
That statement is referred to the relevant committee for consideration. The Honorable Senator Crystal Asige.
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the Ministry of Health Strategic Plan 2018 to 2023, specifically regarding persons with disabilities. In the statement, the committee should: 1. Give a detailed report on the county general hospitals, sub-county hospitals, health facilities and dispensaries that have been made fully accessible with universally designed features and infrastructure since the adoption of the Ministry of the Health Strategic Plan. These features and infrastructures include, but are not limited to, accessible hospital beds, disabled toilets, showers and hot baths, adequate handlebars and grab rails, well-maintained lifts, slip-resistant flooring, step-free access, and so on. 2, give a detailed report on the provision made for mobility aids, assistive devices, and sign language interpretation in these health facilities since adopting the Ministry of Health Strategic Plan. These are imperative to delivery of quality healthcare and quality healthcare to persons with disabilities when communicating. 3, state what disability training health workers have been receiving since the adoption of the strategic plan, detailing how often these trainings take place. Excuse me. 4, state what percentage of health workers within the Ministry of Health are persons with disabilities, as provided for in Article 54(2) of our Constitution. Recognizing that health workers with disabilities are best placed to understand the needs of people with disabilities and identify gaps in service delivery when they occur. And 5, state how many health facilities have established stand-alone PWD desks that offer inclusive and quality services to persons with disabilities. Where PWD desks have been established, what needs assessments do they carry out that are specific to the diverse types of disabilities, their varying degrees, and how to properly handle these conditions? Further, stating how often said assessments are carried out. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a comment on this statement by Senator Crystal. Senator Crystal continues to distinguish herself as an indefatigable defender of persons living with disability or ably gifted persons, Mr. Speaker. And we must continue to commend her, support her as her colleagues, and join her as partners to see persons gifted differently, Mr. Speaker, enjoy their rights as enshrined in Article 54(2) of our Constitution. The Constitution expects of us, Mr. Speaker, to enact legislation and to pursue continuously until such a time as when those persons will be at least 5% of all elective and appointive bodies in the country, Mr. Speaker. Because, and I don't have the statistics right, I may need to check later, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the population of persons living with disability as a percentage of the entire population is actually higher than that 5%, Mr. Speaker. And this good, I think Senator Matinga says it's 11%. Therefore, even 5% is just to demand half of what is their rightful share, Mr. Speaker. The statement that she has brought this afternoon is something that I will follow with keen interest when the Committee on Health returns a report before this House, Mr. Speaker, because it will be important to know. You know, hospital and the health care facilities are facilities that are used by all of us. And we must continue to push and demand from the executive and from our county governments, from institutions such as Parliament and all public institutions, that they continue to be PWD compliant in their trainings, in the facilities that are available, and wholesomely as an institution, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, this is a very progressive statement, and we must commend her and support her. Finally, Mr. Speaker, at the end of last term, before this House adjourned sine die, I had sponsored a bill jointly together with Senator Isaac Mwaura that was meant to actually help persons living with disability enjoy all their constitutional rights. And we had cleaned up the various legislations that exist in the country to ensure that we progressively work towards achieving this constitutional target. Unfortunately, with the lapse of that House of Parliament, that bill also lapsed. I want to encourage Senator Crystal to perhaps maybe get a copy of that particular bill jointly with other legislations perhaps that you might already be working on, and many of us, myself included, will be glad to complete that journey so that in the next few months we are able to secure some of these rights by way of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, if you can allow me maybe to say something on the statement by the Deputy Speaker regarding sports academies.
Honorable Osotsi, you may kindly yield and take your seat, please. The Honorable Matinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I like also to support the statement by Senator. And I would want to say that, Mr. Speaker, sir, we should not only stop short of ensuring that the health facilities are accommodative of the people who are living with disability. We should go a step further, Mr. Speaker, sir, and start having a candid conversation of mainstreaming people living with disability into the main schools. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that the society we live in today, they are highly stereotyped. And this has been caused by the fact that we have treated people who are who have been otherwise living with a disability with a kind of an attitude that is born from the fact that we do not know how to treat them right from the word go. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, so it would be important if we go ahead and mainstream people living with disability into the main schools so that our kids will learn how to deal with them, will learn how to handle them, and they do not need to feel like other people, like they're different from others when these people get to know how to live with them. I therefore support the statement. And I think, as has been said by the majority leader, it is a walk that we as a nation must walk to ensure that even people who are living with disabilities feel like part and parcel of this nation as enshrined in our Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Senator Mazayo. Don't worry.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kwanza nataka kupatia kongole dada yetu Kristo kwa taarifa hii ya walemavu. Bwana Spika, walemavu wako katika aina mbalimbali. Spika, utaona ya kwamba kuna walemavu wa macho hawawezi kuona kama dada yetu, na kuna wale walemavu ambao hawawezi kutembea, kuna walemavu ambao hawawezi kusikia, na hali kadhalika walemavu wa aina mbalimbali. Bwana Spika, ni muhimu sana kuona ya kwamba katika mahospitali yetu tumeweza kuweka mikakati ya kutosha kuona ya kwamba kama zile njia ambazo zinapitiwa na walemavu. Bwana Spika, nimewahi kuwa katika hospitali yetu ya Kilifi. Sijaona kama kumepangwa mikakati mizuri ndani ya hospitali kuona ya kwamba walemavu wanaweza kupita katika zile njia kwa hali ya kwamba hawawezi kupata tabu. Katika ile, kama unaenda katika upande wa ngazi, kuna sehemu fulani kuna walemavu wengine wanakuja wakiwa na magari ya kutembeza na mkono. Tunaona mara nyingi kama kuna ngazi za kupanda, yule mlemavu anakuwa na shida na ni lazima apate matibabu. Na anaenda kumuona daktari akiwa amebebwa na watu, hali alikuwa amekuja na gari, na ile gari yake inachukuliwa inapandishwa kwa ngazi, alafu ndio anapelekwa kwa daktari. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la muhimu kuona kwamba tutaweza kuweka mkazo na kuona kwamba kamati ambayo itashughulika na hii izingatie kwa wale watu ambao ni walemavu, hususan hata pia tukiona ya kwamba kuna wale watu ambao wanatafsiri, wako wanaoweza kutafsiri kwa njia ya kuongea na mikono. Kuna wale wanaweza kutafsiri kwa kuongea, na hao pia wapewe nafasi. Utaona katika michezo pia waweze kushughulishwa katika stadium zile ambazo tuko nazo, ziweze kutengezwa kwa njia ya hali ya kwamba inaweza pia ikaona ikaangalia ikaweka macho yake kwa kamilifu kwa vile wale watu walemavu wanaweza kutumia nafasi hizo. Asante Bwana Spika.
So we'll move to the next statement. Honorable Senator Kalwale. Yes. Zile za Marumba peke yake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 to seek for a statement from the Standing Committee on Health on the construction status of health facilities in informal settlements in Nairobi City County. In the statement, the committee should list the health facilities that were being constructed or rehabilitated in informal settlements in Nairobi City County in the last 2 financial years. And 2, provide the status reports on the completion and operationalization of each of those health facilities, indicating the respective costs of construction or rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, on the same standing order, I wish to seek for a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transport and Housing on the status of operation of the Green Park terminus and the upgrade of the Uhuru Park and Central Park areas in Nairobi City County. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, I would like that we establish the cause of the delay in the operationalization of the Green Park terminus that was set to commence in May 2022 in Nairobi City County. And 2, explain the reasons for the non-completion of the upgrade of the project for Uhuru Park and Central Park that commenced in September 2021, and state the budgeted cost of the project and indicate the amount spent on the project so far. And finally, state when the bus terminus will be operationalized and the park project completed. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I rise also on the same standing order to seek for a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the status of the 16 billion pending bills that were incurred by the Nairobi Metropolitan Services in the last 2 years. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, the committee should provide a comprehensive report on the pending bills accumulated in Nairobi City County in the last 2 years, indicating the amount owed to the respective service providers and the financial year in which the pending bills were incurred. 2, Mr. Speaker, the committee should state whether the Nairobi Metropolitan Services adhered to the procurement law in procuring the goods and services, providing details of whether the projects were tendered for and who won and what were the awarded tenders. And finally, indicate the plans, if any, put in place by the Nairobi City County government to ensure that all contractors owed money by the county are paid before the end of the current financial year. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Those 3 statements are so referred to the relevant committees. Senator Chiranke, what's your statement?
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to comment on the last statement.
What is your statement, Senator?
Oh, okay.
Make your request.
Thank you.
For statement.
Okay. Request for statement, Mr. Speaker, on the planned importation of maize by the ministry, on the planned importation of duty-free maize, 10 million bucks by the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock Development. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on the planned importation of 10 million bags of duty-free maize by the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Development and also Ministry of Trade. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain what informed the decision by the Ministry of Agriculture and Trade, Livestock Development to import maize, and yet the National Cereals and Produce Board has not opened its stores to take up the crop currently being harvested by local farmers across the country, considering the high cost of farm inputs, where 1 bag of fertilizer was 7,000 shillings, they incurred, among other costs, during the planting season. Mr. Speaker, sir, number 2, appraise the Senate on the status of the government subsidized fertilizer in terms of uptake by farmers so far and the amount of fertilizer currently available in stores countrywide, and indicate the steps the government is taking to enhance uptake and ensure local farmers produce sufficient maize and obviate the need for importation of maize outside the country. And Mr. Speaker, finally, recommend that the Cabinet Secretary for Trade, Investment and Industry does not gazette the notice allowing duty-free maize importation from outside the country until the entire crop being harvested currently is purchased by National Cereals and Produce Board, local millers, and National Strategic Grain Reserve. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for that indulgence.
The Honorable Senator Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to thank the Senator of Nandi, Senator Gerard Gay, for a statement on the maize importation. Mr. Speaker, it is sad that we are back to the same cycle that we were in 3 years ago when I and the current Speaker of the National Assembly had to investigate the very same thing of importation of maize when maize was being harvested. Mr. Speaker, luckily, God has saved us this time again, and there's pamba harvest in Trans Nzoia, there's pamba harvest in Bungoma, there's pamba harvest in Nandi, there's pamba harvest in Uasin Gishu, and Elgeyo Marakwet, the islands of Elgeyo Marakwet. So you ask yourself the big question. The harvesting is going on right now. In fact, we find a lot of lorries now ferrying maize from Uasin Gishu to other places. So you ask yourself, what really informed the decision to import maize now? Because yes, the maize may not be enough because most parts of the country were dry. We did not get as much as we would have gotten under normal circumstances in Meru and wherever. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support this statement, we would really like the committee to also relook at the report that we developed after our investigation of maize. Because what we realized at that time is that some of the approvals were overshot by more than double. An approval is given by the cabinet for importation of maize to a certain tune, and we discovered they had imported more than double. So even as they question that, they need to look at the report that came from our earlier report, because it was a report of this House, so that we make sure that we don't suffer double jeopardy. But, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that the harvest in North Rift is very good, and we should not, in fact, be having problems. Yesterday only we talked to the Minister for Education, and we said you have enough maize not to have children at home, because children from Kajiado, children from northern Kenya are at home, basically because there is no food. So it is good that as a House we really put our foot down. The other thing we really need to look at is how is the role of the governors in this, because agriculture is devolved except for policy. What are the governors doing? Why are we not seeing governors frantically looking for food in some of these areas? So even as we are questioning the importation, we really need to start questioning the distribution of food in this country, from the growing zone to the consumption zones, because the country will continue to be like that for a very long time, especially with climate change setting in and having problems. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I stand with the statement of Senator Cherargei. We cannot afford to import maize at a time when harvesting is taking place. They can do importation any other time when we know we don't have. But now that we have, I would like to urge the Minister for Trade to avoid mixing things and allow the Ministry of Agriculture to open the depots first, so that farmers can release their maize before any importation is done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mandago.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement by Senator Cherargei, the Senator for Nandi, on the issue of importation of maize, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think the Cabinet Secretary for Trade has been misled by cartels who have existed in this country for a while, Mr. Speaker, that farmers in maize-producing counties, Mr. Speaker, are hoarding maize at the expense of Kenyans who are suffering from hunger, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the farmers are not hoarding maize. In fact, we are in a season of harvesting, Mr. Speaker, and as the maize is being harvested, it is being sold to traders who are distributing across the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, there are traders from Kitui, there are traders from Isiolo, there are traders from Marsabit and Samburu buying maize to take to those famine-stricken counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the importation of maize that is sanctioned during harvest, Mr. Speaker, is meant to impoverish the farmers who have already suffered major losses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary must be reminded that the situation we are facing of low productivity is as a result of bad politics, Mr. Speaker, in the agriculture sector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we may recall, the farmers in this country were not given any subsidized fertilizer, Mr. Speaker, to enable them produce food at an affordable cost, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, therefore, it cannot be expected that the farmers are going to sell their produce at a lower price when the cost of production, Mr. Speaker, was very high. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that some statements from the Cabinet Secretary are in a manner that is meant to incite the farmers against other citizens of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that importation must be stopped or deferred until the maize in the country, Mr. Speaker, is mopped up. Mr. Speaker, I don't understand the rationale of importation of maize. I've checked the prices globally, Mr. Speaker, and even the so-called GMO maize, Mr. Speaker, will land in Mombasa at a cost of 5,200 by a 90 kg bag of maize. If you add the logistical support required to transport that maize and avail in the areas that is required, Mr. Speaker, the price will go to 5,800. Mr. Speaker, our farmers would be very happy in this country if the National Cereals and Produce Board even opened those stores at a cost of 5,500 per bag, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you farmers will be ready to deliver their maize. In any case, the farm price, the farm gate price we are selling our maize now, Mr. Speaker, is between 4,800 to 5,300, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, there is need to support farmers in this country. Worldwide, Mr. Speaker, farmers are given subsidies to produce because farming in itself cannot be profitable and affordable, and the cost of food cannot be affordable without giving subsidies to the farmers. Mr. Speaker, I would also like the committee to find out what happened with the strategic food reserves that we used to have in this country. Who changed the policy from storing food in the stores to keeping money in the accounts, Mr. Speaker? And that is why we found ourselves in a sorry situation, because all the NCBB stores are empty, because a bad policy was put in place that has messed up the strategic food reserves in this country. And that is why government cannot effectively and efficiently respond when we have issues within a number of counties. And Mr. Speaker, it should be noted that in more than 36 counties in this country, we have NCBB stores, Mr. Speaker. If you visit those stores today, Mr. Speaker, those stores are empty. And we are not saying the strategic food reserves that should be kept in this country is only maize, Mr. Speaker. What is happening with the rice? From where, Mr. Speaker? That is supposed to be part of the strategic food reserves. Where is the rice going, Mr. Speaker? Where is the maize going, Mr. Speaker? Where is the sorghum that was being grown in the semi-arid counties, Mr. Speaker, being sold at? We need to revert and go back to storing food for emergency situations in this country. We cannot keep money in account or give money to organizations like Kenya National Trading Corporation to keep money to buy food when we have a situation like this. Suppose we don't find the food in the market, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, countries all over the world are now using technology to monitor their food situation, to monitor the weather patterns. Suppose the weather patterns globally cannot allow for food production. The countries we are expecting to import the food from, Mr. Speaker, can also keep the food for their own citizens, Mr. Speaker. And therefore it is in the interest of this country that we keep our own strategic food reserves in the stores that have been built and were purposely meant for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore rise to support this statement, and the committee should consider asking the Cabinet Secretary to defer importation of maize until all the maize produced locally in this country have been mopped up and sold. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, they should, as a pledge of this government, Mr. Speaker, going into the future and beginning in the next production cycle, Mr. Speaker, provide a guaranteed minimum return for the maize farmer, so that as farmers, we can determine whether we are going to go back to the farms to do maize, to do food for this country, or decide whether we are going to do other commercial productions, Mr. Speaker, so that we also, as farmers, are also able to meet our subsistence needs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, food production or maize production should not be taken as a hobby, Mr. Speaker. We do maize production as a business. That is where we get our school fees. That is where we get our money to go to hospitals. And we therefore don't want to be impoverished by business people who want to take advantage of a bad situation in the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement. Thank you.
Senator Mazaya.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, nataka kumpa kongole ndugu yangu Cherargei, seneta mchapakazi wa Nandi. Bwana Spika, kama ingekuwa hii nchi haina mahindi, sijui watu wangeishi namna gani, kwa sababu ukiangalia asilimia 90 ya Wakenya wanategemea mahindi. Katika Kenya utaona ya kwamba, Bwana Spika, hakuna nyumba yoyote ambayo hawatumii mahindi. Kwa hiyo ni jambo la kusikitisha sana kuona ya kwamba katika hii nchi ambao sisi tunasema ukulima ndio uti wa mgongo, yako maeneo fulani ambayo yanaweka chakula mpaka tunaita kama food basket, yani mfuko wa chakula cha watu wa Kenya. Ukienda katika bonde la Ufa kule kuna wakulima wa mashamba makubwa. Hata ukija pengine maeneo ya pwani kuna wakulima fulani katika masehemu fulani ambao wao pia wanaweza wanafanya mambo ya ukulima wa mahindi, na hilo ndio tegemeo la Mkenya. Hivi leo ikiwa tunaweza kuambiwa ama tunaweza kuona hata kwa taarifa ya magazeti ya kwamba kuna magunia milioni 10 ya mahindi ambayo yanangoja kushushwa ili Wakenya waweze kutumia hayo mahindi hayo, tunauliza kitu kimoja: hawa wakulima wetu ambao tunasema ukulima ni uti wa mgongo, hawa wakulima wetu, je, sisi kama Wakenya tumewaweka wapi? Hilo ndio swali muhimu sana la kujiuliza, kwa sababu tunaweza kuleta mahindi iaje hapa na tutakuwa tumeua nguvu za mkulima ambaye analima mahindi. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, naona taarifa hii ambayo imeletwa na Cherargei hapa ndani imekuwa ni taarifa ya muhimu sana, na ni jambo la kusisitiza kwamba kamati kama hii itakayokuwa imepewa nafasi ya kuchunguza jambo kama hili, kamati ya ukulima, iweze kuita waziri, iweze kuita wale watu ambao waliweza kuimport, manake hii imefanywa na watu mabiashara, kama walipewa contract na nani, kama ilikuwa namna gani mpaka wakaleta hizo milioni 10 za hayo magunia ya mahindi, ili waje hapa tuwaulize maswali kama kulikuwa kuna ukosefu, kama kulikuwa kuna hii tenda ilitangazwa ama haikutangazwa, iko namna gani ama ilikuwa vipi, ili tuweze kujua na Wakenya wote waweze kujua. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Honorable Senators, you will notice that the statement hour is long spent, and therefore for those statements that we have not managed to call them out, they stand deferred to tomorrow. Next order, Clerk.
For 888 million shillings, Mr. Speaker. Isn't that money that is coming from our voters, Mr. Speaker, and from our taxpayers? So, Mr. Speaker, if we are talking about implementation of executive functions, it is being implemented by the judiciary itself. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the NGCDF, we don't fall anywhere. I don't sit as a member of CDF committee. I don't sign anywhere, Mr. Speaker. The checks has never, in fact, we play our oversight role in accordance with Article 95 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. In fact, we wait until the money is brought to us here, the reports from the Auditor General, and then we subject the Auditor General's report. We look at it, how was the money spent at the constituency level, Mr. Speaker. It has nothing, in fact, I don't know how they spend, Mr. Speaker, the money. In fact, I'm also a stranger. So when somebody issues a ruling that impeaches on the conduct and integrity of the members of parliament, as if we are spenders of money. We don't spend any money, Mr. Speaker. So, with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Order, honorable members. The chair has to propose the question first. Propose the motion here. Honorable members, the chair proposes this question. Order, Honorable Junet. I wish now to propose a motion that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund laid on the table of the House on Thursday, November the 17th, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 43, subsection 4 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act of 2015 and paragraphs 5, 2, and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations of 2016. Approves the list of nominees for the appointment to the following 68 constituency committees of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. The list is as contained in the order paper of today. Honorable members, I now put the question that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund laid on the table of the House on Thursday, November the 17th, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 43, subsection 4 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act of 2015 and paragraphs 5, 2, and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations of 2016, approves the list of nominees for appointment to the following 68 constituency committees of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. As many of those opinions say aye. Aye. As many of the contrary opinions say nay. The ayes have it.
Order number 9, motion, establishment of a parliamentary joint ad hoc committee on a legislative proposal to amend the constitution to entrench certain specified funds.
Majority Leader. Order, Honorable Osoro.
The Honorable Osoro, Honorable Speaker, imagines that he can whip me, being the chief whip. Honorable Speaker, allow me to move that the motion, order number 9, that acknowledging that Article 256 of the Constitution provides for the process of amending the Constitution by parliamentary initiative, further acknowledging that Standing Order 1147A of the National Assembly Standing Orders provides for the process of introducing legislative proposals in respect of propositions amending the Constitution, noting the general debate in the House on the legislative proposal to amend the Constitution to entrench the National Government Constituency Development Fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, the Senate Oversight Fund, and the Economic Stimulus and Empowerment Fund in the Constitution, cognizant of the comments and views of honorable members during general debate on the legislative proposal, recognizing the need for a bicameral approach on the proposal prior to publication of the relevant bill, acknowledging that the subject matter of the legislative proposal cuts across the mandate of more than one committee of the House. Now, therefore, in furtherance to the provisions of Article 256 of the Constitution on amendment by parliamentary initiative, this House resolves the following. 1, to establish a joint parliamentary ad hoc committee on a proposal to amend the Constitution to entrench certain specialized funds comprising 9 members from each of the Houses of Parliament to do the following. A, to facilitate collation of views from the comments by members of Parliament during the general debate on the proposal, and inviting members with similar or related proposals to make submissions before the committee. B, to invite, engage with, and consider submissions from stakeholders and relevant constitutional and statutory bodies with a law reform mandate, including the Attorney General and the commissions and independent offices established under Chapter 15 of the Constitution. C, in consultation with the sponsors, attempt to develop and recommend a harmonized version of the proposal arising from the submissions received. And D, report to the Houses of Parliament within 90 days to enable the speakers to make a decision and give direction on whether or not the legislative proposal is to be published into a bill or not to be proceeded with. 2, that the offices of the clerks of Houses of Parliament provide secretarial services to the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee in accordance with our standing orders. 3, that the following members present represent the National Assembly in the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. My apologies, Honorable Speaker, I seek your indulgence. I should have mentioned that I am moving this motion under Standing Order number 48 in an amended form. And maybe I will mention the area that I want to amend now in these 3. 1 is the Honorable Samuel Kiprono Chepkonga MP, who seconded the earlier motion, as a co-chairperson. 2, Honorable Speaker, on the order paper there was the Honorable George Gitonga Murugara MP. That is where we are amending to replace the Honorable George Gitonga Murugara MP with the Honorable Rebecca Tonkei MP. 3, the Honorable Ekomas Mwengi Mutuse MP. 4, the Honorable Wakili Edward Mureu MP. 5, the Honorable Catherine Nanjala Wambilianga MP. 6, the Honorable John Badi EGH MP. 7, the Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo MP. 8, the Honorable David Mwalika Mboni MP. 9, the Honorable Kakai Bisau MP. 10, the Honorable Robert Gishimu Githinji MP, who is a co-opted member. And the second co-opted member is a co-sponsor of the motion, the Honorable Stephen Mule MP, who is also a co-opted member. 4, Honorable Speaker, to request the Senate to appoint a similar number of members to represent the Senate in the Joint Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. Honorable Speaker, as members will recall, on Wednesday, 2nd November this year, the Honorable Gishimu Githinji MP and the Honorable Stephen Mule MP made a statement on the legislative proposal to amend the Constitution to entrench the funds, the National Government Constituency Fund, the National Government Affirmative Fund, the Senate Oversight Fund, and the Economic Stimulus and Empowerment Fund in the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, following that statement, over 120 members made their general remarks on this legislative proposal. And in this regard, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 114.7a, you, Honorable Speaker, committed to facilitate the collation of views from members in an appropriate forum. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee in its sitting proposed the establishment of this joint ad hoc committee to collect the views raised by members. Considering that the legislative proposal, Honorable Speaker, touches on the functions of county governments in terms of Article 110 of the Constitution, then it therefore necessitates this to be a consideration of the matter in a bicameral manner. Hence, the request for the Senate to appoint a similar number of members to represent the Senate in the joint ad hoc committee. Honorable Speaker, the committee, if approved, will carry out very structured public participation in accordance with the provisions of Article 118, 1B of the Constitution, and should be able to report back to both houses in 90 days to enable you, Honorable Speaker, to make a decision and give direction on whether the legislative proposal then should be published into a bill or not. Honorable Speaker, as you put the question on the earlier motion, Honorable Speaker, on the constitution of constituency fund committees, I did hear the Honorable Speaker, if you can allow the leaders in the minority to consult and pass a note to me on the further amendment, with your indulgence, that they intend to make on the list, but also to encourage them to be doing these consultations earlier, not on the floor. And to also consider incorporating...
Order. Chair actually notices the serious imbalance of gender in here.
That's what Honorable Speaker was going to say, that from the 9 members, Honorable Speaker, The majority had 5 slots. The minority had 4 slots. The majority, Honorable Speaker, has done very well because we have complied with the 2/3 gender rule. Out of the 5 members, we have 2 honorable ladies, the Honorable Rebecca Tonkei, MP, and the Honorable Catherine Nanjala Wambilianga, MP. The minority side has 4 slots. So I would encourage them as they constitute in the other house to consider the issue of gender balance. Honorable Speaker, if you indulge the minority side, they seek to replace the Honorable David Mwalika Mboni with the Honorable Yusuf Hassan, the Member of Parliament for Kamukunji. Therefore, I wish to move then in that amended form. There is, out of the 9, we have the 2 ladies, and members, we also appreciate that is also a consideration to incorporate members members of Parliament living with disability. And I am informed by the whip and the minority leader, they intended to accommodate a member, a PWD member in the ad hoc committee. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if you may indulge me, as the Honorable Pukosa requests, I may go through the list again, that the following members represent the National Assembly in the joint Parliamentary ad hoc committee. 1, the Honorable Samuel Chepkonga, MP, co-chairperson. In place of the Honorable George Gitonga Murugara, to have the Honorable Rebecca Tonkei, MP. The Honorable Ekomas Mwengi Mutuse, MP. The Honorable Wakili Edward Mureu, MP. The Honorable Catherine Anjala Wabilianga, MP. The Honorable John Buddy, EGH, MP. The Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo, MP. In place of the Honorable David Mwalika Mboni, MP, we shall now have the Honorable Yusuf Hassan, MP, the Member of Parliament for Kamukunji. The Honorable Kakai Bisau, MP, and the 2 co-opted members, who fortunately are 1 from either coalition. The Honorable Shimu Githinji, MP, is a co-opted member, and the Honorable Stephen Mule, MP, co-opted. Honorable Speaker, I was just saying as we moved, as you rose to put the question on the earlier motion, I did hear the minority whip ask for how long shall we lament about CDF? For how long? For how long is the question? And the answer could lie in this ad hoc committee. Because as the Honorable Chepkonga said as he seconded that motion, indeed the National Government Constituency Development Fund is under imminent threat of extinction. And it's rather unfortunate, Honorable Speaker, that those who speak and those who sponsor the court cases, Honorable Speaker, and it's a good thing, Honorable Speaker, that in the previous 2 parliaments, in the 11th and 12th Parliament, we had run-ins with our sister house in the Senate. And to be honest, they cannot run away from being part of the co-sponsors of the court cases that pervade on issues to do with NGCDF. But I am glad, Honorable Speaker, that in this 13th Assembly, we have started off very well. And it is indeed laudable that even as a House Business Committee considered an ad hoc committee, recognizing that this matter also touches on counties, and there is also the Senate Oversight Fund that is envisaged to be incorporated into a constitution just like NGCDF. We are now having a joint ad hoc committee, a parliamentary joint ad hoc committee. And I really want to take this opportunity to speak to our brothers and our sisters in the Senate and the other rather busy bodies out there, Honorable Speaker, who fight NGCDF imagining that they are fighting with members of Parliament. NGCDF, as we have all stated here, and I think that during the general debate on this proposal, members were very emphatic, that NGCDF has absolutely nothing and no benefit to the Member of Parliament. This is a fund that benefits millions of Kenyans. Millions of young children today, Honorable Speaker, who do not know whether they will report to school in January because not a single constituency in this country has funds to award bursaries. All of us, including myself, Honorable Speaker, I am even afraid of stepping into my constituency office in Kikuyu. Every Monday in my constituency office, out of about 120 to 130 people who patronize that office, 105 in the last 1 month have been patronizing my constituency office looking for bursaries. I do not have the funds. Honorable Speaker, unless those who sponsor these court cases can tell us that the government of the Republic of Kenya has adequate funds to ensure that education is completely free, then we have no choice but to have NGCDF in place to benefit the millions of our children who are suffering out there. I hear the leader of minority adding the question of classrooms. Honorable Speaker, you have seen the challenge that government has had to live with, and I have seen the new cabinet secretary in charge of the interior. They are criminals. But the most effective way of dealing with criminals is ensuring that we have officers, boots on the ground, in our neighborhoods, in our estates, in our villages. That cannot happen without NGCDF rolling out the construction of security police posts and police stations in our neighborhoods, Honorable Speaker. It is not enough to speak about police officers patrolling. You will make them patrol the streets of the CBD in the next few days. Unless the Member of Parliament for Kamukunji, the Honorable Yusuf, is able to construct police posts in Gikomba, in Majengo, and have officers reside within the communities where they are working, then the question of dealing with insecurity will just be talk for cabinet secretaries in office. They will threaten criminals. Criminals will hide in other places for a few days and reemerge the moment they don't see officers patrolling our streets. Therefore, I just want to tell them the most effective way to ensure that our people are secure is to ensure that you facilitate members of parliament to be able to identify the needs of the people in terms of security needs and be able to identify where NGCDF committees, together with the national government board, the NGCDF board, will construct police posts to ensure that all our neighborhoods are secure. Honorable Speaker, last Parliament, when I chaired the Budget Committee, we, together with the Honorable Julius Meli, we tried to implore on the Ministry of Education, when they started the talk of doing CBC classrooms, that this process and this project was better rolled out under NGCDF, and there was a lot of resistance from the Ministry of Education. Today, Honorable Speaker, these members will tell you, in all our backyards, we have miniature classrooms, because they are not standard classrooms, and members will bear me witness. The classrooms built apparently for junior secondary by the Ministry of Education under CS Magoha, they are actually junior classrooms. They are miniature classrooms. They are not standard classrooms. And the cost of building those classrooms, the cost is way above what members of the NGCDF committees utilize to construct standard classrooms. Honorable Speaker, the value of NGCDF is not just in construction of infrastructure for security and classrooms. It is the economic value that the public also derives from activities that come with construction of that infrastructure at the constituency level, Honorable Speaker. Because when contractors are procured by NGCDF committees, most of those contractors are local contractors. It is local labor that is deployed. When the ministry procures under a national framework people to build classrooms, they procure from Jogoo House in Nairobi, and they bring in foreigners to construct those classrooms. And no wonder, Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Education was very hesitant to roll out that project of junior classrooms or junior secondary school miniature classrooms. And many of them now dot our schools. I would estimate probably, based on what I see in my own constituency, 60% are incomplete. But the budget is exhausted. There is not a single NGCDF project you will find in my constituency, and I'll just give my constituency because I know my constituency better than any other, that you will find the budget is exhausted and the project is incomplete. In most cases, with NGCDF committees, because it is members of the public who are implementing these projects through their project management committees, they will complete projects and probably even have a saving that they then use to equip those classrooms. Therefore, I cannot underscore the value of NGCDF. And I say it not to the member of parliament, but to the public and even to the country's economy. And that's what I was saying. When you implement these projects at the local level, you buy cement, you buy masonry, you buy sand, you procure local labor, and money is devolved, money is left at the local level, unlike when you roll out government projects at the national level. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is quite important that even as we compose and constitute this ad hoc committee, that they engage and engage positively with all stakeholders. I would encourage the public participation with this ad hoc committee not to be restricted to Parliament, Senate, and government agencies, but also to go down to the people in the villages. Get to hear from the people the value of NGCDF to them. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I have been very hesitant to speak to our judiciary from this floor. But allow me, Honorable Speaker, to speak to our judiciary, to also be sensitive to the needs and aspirations of the Kenyan people. We have witnessed the rollout of our devolution structures in this country over the last 10 years. But Kenyans will tell you they have seen the impact of CDF better than the impact of devolution in many of our counties and many of our constituents, Honorable Speaker. I therefore want to plead with the judiciary to also listen to the people, even as they listen to the busybodies and activists, many of whom are civil society activists who are doing this to get funding for their civil society organizations, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me not go into much more beyond that because of time. You can see my time is gone, and beg to move and ask members to support the constitution of this ad hoc committee and request the Honorable John Buddy, who is a member of this ad hoc committee, proposed member of this ad hoc committee, to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to start in seconding this motion by saying that Kenyans, we are indeed unique. Kenyans are very unique. Kenyans will always kill a very good thing they have started themselves. There are instances in this country where we have seen, and I've seen it in Parliament, many countries, many parliaments, many treasuries across the continent coming to Kenya to learn how CDF works. And many countries have now adopted CDF concept and model. Yet Kenyans are very busy killing the same. Something which is so unique, that is so Kenyan, and something that the only thing I would say has succeeded in this country for years without much problems. And so today, Mr. Speaker, we are now discussing that we need to anchor CDF in the Constitution. First, I want to apologize to Kenyans that I was in the 10th Parliament where we passed the new or the 2010 Constitution. And we were in that Parliament with you, Mr. Speaker. But we did not see it fit
to entrench CDF into our constitution. How I wish that we saw this coming and we did it then. But Mr. Speaker, there are individuals who went to court. I know it is their right to go to court. But I think when you are going to court going forward, we need to pass some laws that when you are going to court on a matter of public importance, you should not just file the case alone. You must accompany it with a number of signatures across the country. 1 million signatures. Because how do you challenge a fund that is a public fund that touches on the lives of Kenyans, and you're just an individual running an NGO, receiving funding from unknown donors, people you want to please that you are doing something. And then now you put us in a situation where the children of Kenya cannot go to school. Some of us, we are here because we went to school, Mr. Speaker. Some of us come from backgrounds that if it were not for education, we would not be where we are today. And you are denying children of Kenya from going to school because of your own activism. And the activism is not just, Mr. Speaker, with these people who went to court. The activism has infiltrated our judicial system. And that is something that needs to be dealt with, Mr. Speaker. I am not condemning judiciary as such, but when you find a judiciary which makes a ruling on an act of parliament of 2013, but without any prompting, mention something about the act of 2015, then you know that this is judicial activism. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with Honorable Junet Mohamed that this House has lamented too much. And Mr. Speaker, I'm just trying to imagine if the constituency I represented from 2007 to 2022, and which Karoli Omondi is now representing, if we then didn't get CDF funds from 2007 to date, I'm trying to imagine the kind of infrastructure we do have in our schools, both primary and secondary schools. So, Mr. Speaker, these are my suggestions. The time limit for this committee of 90 days is too much. If you ask me, this committee must burn midnight oil during this Christmas, and we do this within